our character selection, I have a few small fixes from the previous video, and we still need to take a look at players leaving the lobby, and we're also going to set up the character stats, and I'm also going to make sure these actually load into the player in game, so they're not only going to show up in the menu, but they're also actually going to affect the character in game. So that's what we're going to do today. If you enjoy the series, please remember to leave a like, and you're welcome to join the Game Dev Raw Discord. Link in the description down below. So let's get started right away. First of all, let's take a look at a few small things that slipped through in the previous video. So let's go into the gameplay lobby folder and open up the lobby character. For playing the mesh animation, I forgot to set it to looping, so I also made a comment in here. So set the animation to looping, and that will make sure the animation keeps playing. Then next we're going to go into the character menu widget. So let's open the character menu. And in here, if the menu opens the first time, we get the default button style from one of the buttons. And I actually use the character blue button in here, or character green. And that's not the best choice, because if you come in here a second time and you actually have that character selected, then the green button will be the default button style. So we're gonna have to fix that, and an easy way to fix it is to just use the back button for the default button style, because the back button doesn't change. So let's plug in the back button to set the default button style, and that should be fixed as well. Then we have two a little bit more important fixes, and we need to go into the menu game mode. So let's go to the framework menu game mode, and in here we created a function to update a character for the controller, and we want to make sure that we also store the player state in here. So this isn't in the video, and we could set this to size to fit. That doesn't hurt, so let's make sure we do that. And then we want to make sure that we also save our player state in here. So if we go a little bit up, we have the update lobby event, and we can just copy it from here. So get the player state, cast it to the shooter player state, and then store the profile on the player state. So copy that, and we're going to paste it right here, plug it in, and then let me see, we can get the controller from the input node over here, and we can get the actual player profile from the input as well. So that's fixed. And the last thing we need to take a look at is in our game instance. So open the shooter game instance, and over here, if we change the player name, we actually reset our character row name and our character class. So that's a bad idea. So let's drag in the player profile info and split the struct bin, and then we can simply plug in the character row name and the class that's stored in here, so we do not overwrite them. Compile and save that as well. And those are actually the fixes that I have laid out, so that should be good to go. Now there's one thing I want to take a look at as well, because that's pretty quick to do, and that's when a character logs out or a player logs out. So if we open up the menu game mode and go into the event on logout, we need to make sure that we add this. So that's what we're going to do. So a menu controller leaves the game, and we're going to check if that menu controller has a lobby character. So we're going to drag off the menu controller, and we're going to do get lobby character. And we want to make sure that it's actually there. So I'm going to grab my notes quickly, because I just deleted my example. So we're going to simply check if this is empty or not. So equal. And then we're going to grab a branch, plug it in here, and plug in the condition. So if we do not have a lobby character, then we can just continue to the remove from array node. That's fine. If we do have one, we're going to destroy the lobby character. So destroy actor. And then we also want to make sure that we grab our lobby player spot from the lobby menu controller, because if we have a character, we also have a lobby player spot. So get the lobby player spot, and we want to reset it so it's not in use again. So set is spot used, and set it back to false, plug it in, and then that's good to go. You do need to make sure that you also update the character selection if a player leaves the lobby. So make sure you enable update character selection over here as well. So all of these things should work now, and we should be able to test it as well, so why not? And let's host a lobby. And join one. There we go. So let me see, I can select a different character. That's all working. So that seems to be good. So if I would leave the lobby, the character also leaves. So that seems to be working as well. And if I would join again, I would probably end up in the first spot because everything got reset. So if the reset doesn't work, I would end up in the third spot. So let me check, and there we are. So from the looks of it, that's working. Okay, so we got that covered. Now let's take a look at adding some statistics like health or strength or whatever you want to the actual character. That table, and the reason for that is so we can load them in the menus, and we can also use them when the character spawns into the level, and he can also load them from the data table. So that way, if you want to change them, you do not have to worry about having to change them in multiple places. You can just go to one single place and change all your important variables in there. So first let's go to the character info structure that we created earlier. And in here, I'm going to add 3 variables. So the first one is going to be health, for example. And I'm just using health, strength, and stamina right now, but you can use any kind of variable. So stamina and strength. And we're going to save and close it down. So if we go into the character info table, we can set the defaults for each character. So let's make sure that they have a bit of different values so we can see some differences. So I'm going to set the first one to 100 and then 2 times 75, and the second one maybe the other way around. And then the third one, I'm going to change things up a little bit more. So just to make sure we have a little bit of difference going on. There we go. It's not really important right now. I just want to show the logic behind it. I'm not going to actually use these. So we've created the variables. Now let's go into the character menu and let's set it up in here. So we want to have some kind of border in here where we can display the statistics. Oh, I'm sorry. So we're going to grab a new border. Let me grab my example to make sure I'm not screwing up. So we're going to grab a border first. Let's drag it in here. And I've set all of them to alpha 0.5. So I'm going to do the same for this one. And I'm going to size it to something like 425 by 130. So 425, 130. And let's anchor it to the top right. So something like this. Now inside this border, I'm going to grab a vertical box so I can lay out some stuff above each other. And inside the vertical box, I'm going to grab myself a border. And inside that border, I'm going to drop a horizontal box. So inside that horizontal box, I can drop some text first and then a progress bar. So that's the setup that we're going to use. Now for the second border, I'm going to make this black. So that's all zeros and then 0.7. And then let's make sure that our font matches. So I'm going to copy and paste it. There we go. So the progress bar is going to display our values. So we're going to use a bar for that. So this is going to be the bar for the health. And we need to make sure that this is a variable. So I've renamed it and make sure it's a variable in here. Now for the text, we're simply going to say what's in here. So that's health. And then we can simply duplicate this border. So let's grab the border over here and duplicate it. And then we can use those for stamina and strength. So let's make this our bar stamina. And change the text as well. And do the same thing for the third one. So that's our bar strength. And change the text in here. There we go. Now I'm going to set the minimal desired width for these text values. So they're going to match up. So I'm something like 150. Yeah, that looks fine. So now everything lines up and we are good to go in here. So we can compile and save it. And let's go to the graph. So in here we're going to create one simple function that will update the bars for us. So I'm going to call this function update character stats. Update character stats. And it needs one input, and that's the character row name. And that's a name variable. So now in here we can grab our data table. So we're going to get a data table row, get table row. And we want to get it from our character info table. So we can break the struct over here and we can grab the values. So we need to make sure that we set them in percentages. So we're going to divide them through 100. And then for the health one, we can grab in our bar health and simply set the percent. Actually, what's going wrong here? Is this a progress bar? It is a progress bar, so we should be able to set the percentage. Okay, there we go. So set percent, we want this node over here. I'm not sure why I couldn't find it the first time, but whatever. So divide the variable by 100 and plug it in. And do the same thing for the other ones, so we can set the stamina and the strength. There we go, and make sure you plug in the correct bars. So stamina for the middle one and strength for the last one. And that's good to go. So if we dive into our event graph, we actually have two occasions where we want to call this function. So the first time when the menu actually gets created, so when we enter the menu, and we can call it right at the end over here. So we can simply call our update character statistics and then plug in our character row name from the profile structure over here. And we also want to update them if we press a character button. So we have a function over here, character button pressed. And right at the end, we can simply plug it in. So if we go over here, after we saved our selected character, we can update our character statistics. And simply use the row name from here. And that should work as well. So with this setup, it should actually appear in the menu, although it doesn't really affect the character yet, but I'll get back to that in a little bit. So if we host the game, select character. Oh, I forgot to set the size of the bars, so my bad. Let's close it down, designer. So if we select our progress bars, we need to make sure that we set them to fill. So they actually fill up the remaining space in the widget. Compile, save, and go back. So now the bar updates with the correct values if we select a different character or if we enter the menu. So that's working as well. So now let's have a look how we can transfer these statistics to the character as well. Let's open up our character. So we have the setup with the parent and child blueprints, and this is the first time that we can actually use it in our benefit. So let's start by adding the variables to our character so we can actually work with them. Oh, really? So I'm gonna add the health, the stamina and the strength variables in here, and those are floats, and we do need to make sure they are set to be replicated. So health, and then we have stamina, and we also have strength. So with those in place, we can go to the construction script, and in here we can make sure that we set them. So the construction script runs on all instances of the character, just like begin play, and we only want the server to run this. So first we're going to grab a switch has authority and filter out the clients. And then we also need a variable for our character row name, by the way. So let's add that as well. Character row name. And that's our name variable. And this one does not need to be replicated. That's fine. So if we are the server, we are going to get a table row name, table row. And we're going to get it from our character info table. We're going to plug in our character row name as the variable, and we can break the structure in here to set our stat values. So let's grab in our health, strength and stamina, and make sure we plug everything in. There we go. So this is on the parent blueprint, so this will actually execute on all of the child blueprints. And now all we need to do is go into one of the child blueprints, or we need to go in all of them actually, but let's start with one. So we're going to open the construction script in here as well. And then we need to make some room in here, because before we execute the parent construction script, we want to set our character row name. So we're going to drag off here and set character row name. And plug it back in, and now we can simply set it to the correct row name. So we only need to do this once for each character. So that's Quinn Blue, and that's good to go. So now we need to do the same thing in the other child blueprints. So let's open those up as well. Green, purple and red. Go to the construction script and make sure that you actually set the variable before the parent construction script. So character row name. And we have Quinn red in here. So that's Quinn red. Compile, save. And this is Quinn purple. So again, set character row name. Quinn purple, and the last one is Quinn green. Character row name to Quinn green. So with that set up, if we would ever want to change something in there, we could simply do it in the construction script of the parent. And now everything should load for all of the child blueprints according to their data table. So we actually use the data table character row names from here. So make sure these names match up. And with that in place, we could make sure that everything is working. So let's go to event begin play, for example. And right now all we can do is have a little print at the beginning. So we do not have actual health and stamina, etc. set up, so we're simply going to print them on screen. So let's grab a local controlled player, otherwise we get a lot of duplicate. And then we're going to format the text. And we can create a little bit of text in here. So I'm going to start with an empty line, and then I'm going to set the health value. And if I use open bracket A, close bracket, I can create a wildcard in here, and over here I can plug in a variable, and that will be displayed in the text over here. So then I can do the same thing for stamina and the strength. So stamina, and that's going to be variable B, and then strength is going to be C. And we can plug in the text into the print string. Now let's make sure it stays a little bit longer than 2 seconds. Oh, 15, that should be enough. And then we can plug in our variables from here. So now the locally controlled player will print the variables on screen, and they should be set by the server. So if we have different variables printed, then we know it's working. There is a little thing that I discovered over here when I was testing. This print string doesn't always show up for the server. And that's again because this is locally controlled. It doesn't always return correctly because the server isn't always possessed when begin play fires. And this gets a little bit annoying because again we could fix this with a delay, but I don't want to do delays in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm simply going to get rid of begin play entirely, and I'm going to add a custom event and call this multicast begin play. Make sure that I set this to a multicast event and plug it in over here. And then I'm going to go to my event possessed. So this only executes on the server, and when the server has the pawn possessed, I'm going to call my multicast event begin play. And this will fix all of the issues with delays and other crap like that. So we're done with that kind of stuff. And we have the print in place, so we should be able to test it. So let's compile, save, and let's dive into the game. So multiplayer host game, and then multiplayer search game. So this is loading from the save game, so it should display the same values for both of the players. So we're gonna start the game right now, and we should be able to see the print on top here with the correct values. And we do not actually have anything in place. That's nice. So let's see what's going wrong here. I'll be back in a sec. Okay, nothing was really wrong. I was just too quickly testing something again. So if I go into my shooter game mode where we have the spawn default pawn function, I have the player state hooked up, so I can only test in the standalone game mode and not in editor. So to work around this, I want to hook up the seamless travel boolean that we have in the lobby to this function, so we can add a branch in here and we do not need to change this every time we want to play in editor or switch to standalone. And that's not really too much work, so let's tackle that right away. Let's dive into our game instance, and we're going to create a boolean in here, and that's called seamless travel enabled. So seamless travel enabled. And by default that's set to false, so that's fine. Now we can compile and save it and close it down. And go to our lobby menu widget. So open this up and dive into the graph. Over here we have a function called onCheckStateChanged for the seamless travel boolean, and right in here we're simply going to get our game instance and set the newly created boolean as well. So let's get our game instance. And we're going to set the seamless travel enabled boolean. We need to cast it first, so cast to the shooter game instance. And once we have it cast, we can get our seamless travel boolean. And we can set it to the same value that we set over here. So we can simply plug this in. And now that this matches up, we can use this variable again in our shooter game mode. So we can close this one down and we can open up our shooter game mode in the framework folder. And we can simply get the variable on begin play. So let's do that first. And I don't think we have begin play in here yet. So let's create event begin play. And let me grab my notes quickly because I don't want to screw up things. So just a sec. Okay, so it's really simple. We're going to get our game instance. And we need to cast it again, so cast to shooter game instance. And from this we can get our boolean, so get seamless travel enabled boolean. And we are going to create a variable in here as well, so let's promote it to variable and let's call it seamless travel enabled. And then we can also set the actual variable from the game mode as well. So if we have the class defaults, use seamless travel, we can make sure that matches up. So we can set use seamless travel if we simply right click. and hook that up as well. So that's good to go. And now if we go into our spawn default pawn function, we can make sure that everything works in here. And we need to create a local variable for that. So let's promote our pawn character class to a local variable. So local character class, and then we can set them over here. So set the character class to the player controller value or set it to the player state value. And then plug these into the spawn actor node. And from here we want to get the local variable again, just like this. And now all we need to do is add our branch in here to check if we are using seamless travel. And with seamless travel enabled, we want to use the player state, and when it's disabled, we want to use the save game object. So that's the player controller, and that should be good. So we have everything hooked up in here. I think we should be good to go. So now we could test this, and hopefully this time it works. So let's have a little look. Multiplayer, host game. Let's change the name. Come on. There we go. So I'm going to select one different character, although it doesn't really matter because it's only going to load the last character that I selected. So this time it will load the red character for both players. And they should both have AD, health, stamina and strength, if I remember correctly. And that seems to be working. So the print on top of the screen verifies that the client as well as the server has these variables passed on to them. And both of us have a different character model, so that's good as well. Now there is one thing that I want to mention. If you noticed closely, this time if I joined the session for the client, after I selected my character, the level selection disappeared. And at this point, or when you start testing with multiple clients or things like that, we need to start thinking about reliability, because sometimes replicated functions will be dropped, and if they get dropped, obviously nothing happens. So if, for example, we go to our menu controller and we have all of these replicated events over here, and they are pretty important for the actual game. So we want to make sure that all of these events are reliable, and if we select one of these nodes, you can simply enable the reliable flag over here. And with this flag enabled, that means that there is like a 99% chance this event won't get dropped. So you cannot guarantee it, but the effort will be done. So we need to make sure that for all gameplay important events, you set this to reliable, and you don't want to do this for stuff like spawning FX or something like that, because obviously this will cost you some bandwidth as well. So, well, this is just the lobby, and these events are not going to execute on tick or things like that, so this wouldn't hurt too much. So we're simply going to set all of these to be reliable. And we can do the same thing for our lobby character, for example. So if we go into our gameplay lobby folder, we have the lobby character with the multicast events. And although this is all cosmetic, it's just nice if it's working. And again, we are in the server, so we are in the lobby, so all of these events are not going to execute on tick or have any wild execution. So we can simply set them to be reliable, and that should not cause any problems. And with all of this setup, this should work better. So if we go into our lobby, and maybe we should just test a standalone game with 3 players. So hopefully my PC can make this happen, but I'm gonna keep my fingers crossed. So I also have my recording software running, so this might take a little bit. Oh, that's not too bad. Okay. There we go. So we should have 3 players. So let's see what happens. So let's go and host a game and change my name over here and join a session. And let's do the same thing over here again. And now I should be able to select some different characters for each player as well. And let's make this one purple. So now everything should work. We can enable seamless travel because we are in our standalone game, and start the game. And now we should actually spawn in with 3 different characters, and on each screen you can see the print is different. So because we are in standalone, it only prints the values for that player, so you won't see all 3 values, but you can still see it's working. So I think we have everything pretty much covered. In the next video we're going to take a look at character customization, so we can also assign different models or different skins to each character. So hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please leave a like and I'll be back for more. Later.